I grew up in a little place called Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, surrounded by rice fields, and my parents were 15 and 17 years old when they got pregnant with me. Back in 1972, two teenagers not married and pregnant was prohibited. So my grandparents asked my mother to put me up for adoption, and then they discussed the drive to Memphis, Tennessee, which was the biggest, closest city that performed abortions. But my mom and dad agreed to get married so they could keep me and give me a chance at life. I knew I was going to be a hairstylist. I started cutting hair when I was 4 years old. I literally cut off all my own hair, and it was long. I took it above my ear, but I would cut animals' hairs, Barbie's hair, the neighbor's hair. The running joke in my house was hide the scissors. When I was 9 years old, my mom and stepfather took in a 17-year-old boy. He had been kicked out of his home because he got caught smoking pot at school. And my mom and stepdad decided that he would sleep in my bedroom since I had twin beds. So when he asked me to push the beds together to sleep closer to him, that's what I did. I always kind of had a crush on him. I didn't realize the age difference. And so when he asked if I would pretend to be his girlfriend, that's what I did. In that moment, I can't really remember what happened. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. Looking back now that I'm at the age I am, I could see me as a little girl laying there experiencing this, but in the moment, it's almost like my mind protected me and drew me away from it. But I eventually made my way to the bathroom that night and found myself in the corner crying and shaking, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to use a washcloth because I didn't want my mother to find it, and how would I explain that? And I didn't want to turn on the water because they may wake up. And so I remember just sitting in the corner of the bathroom until at some point in time I cried myself to sleep. And when I woke up, I could see a window above the shower that the sun was coming up. So I made my way back to that bedroom as quiet as I could. I didn't want to wake anybody in the house because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what had just been done to me. So I laid in that bed as quiet as a mouse. I never fell back asleep that morning. And when he got up and went to breakfast, I just laid there. I thought, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to go sit and eat breakfast? But eventually my mom, she called me to come have breakfast, and that's what I did. I got up and I went and sat down at the bar and I ate my breakfast right next to him, and that's when I began to suppress. I graduated high school in 1991. I was voted in the Who's Who, most popular, and school clown, and the biggest flirt. And those were great days. Those were great memories back at Cedarville High School. Then I graduated beauty school in 1992 and became a single parent. I had my son Chase, and times were hard. I started out working at this little salon named the Hair Trend on Main Street, but I only had 4 or 5 clients a week, so I had to pick up a second job at this women's boutique, and I would work the boutique from 9 till about 5 o'clock and close up, and then I'd cross the street and cut hair at night from 5 till 9 o'clock. And Chase and I lived off government assistance back then. We had food stamps and WIC and HUD housing. We didn't get to spend much time together though, because back in those days, I mostly spent my time partying when I wasn't working. It took me 4 years to get off assistance. And within that time, I had made quite a name for myself. And I began having these late night parties at my house. I had this crush on a police officer in town, and I thought I was doing everything right. But I was 22 years old when he raped me. At that moment, looking back, I lost it. My life began to spiral down, and I lost what little self-respect and self-esteem I had left. I began to self-medicate with food and speeders, and just like a roller coaster, I'd binge for days on food, and then I would pop some speed so that I curbed my appetite and lose some weight. But it was never enough. I met my husband when I was 24 years old and thought if I could get out of that little small town and move away, that all the pain would go away and I could be so much more than I was. I could go back to serving God. I could be a good mother to my son. He'd have a father, and we could be a family. So on July the 7th of 2000, I married him and we moved to Texas. We left all family and friends that we had ever known, and we went 750 miles away to this big city. I mean, this was a big city to me. My husband had a great job. We had a beautiful home. It was all new, this new life. And I got to stay at home and be a mom to Chase. I did my best to make up for those lost years. I got pregnant a year later and gave birth to our daughter, Jaden, and life was good for a while. But then my husband started cheating on me. First when he would travel out of town, and then came the internet. As my weight continued to climb and I couldn't get in control of it, I began to write and journal again, looking for some sort of peace. Finally, I surrendered and fell on my hands and knees, and I just cried out to God. I was just looking for some comfort, and admitted for the first time I was self-medicating with food. At Jaden's 6-month checkup, my doctor told me I needed a gastric bypass, and I weighed about 287 pounds at that time. So on April the 8th of 2002, that's what I did. But I continued to keep God in my life, and I started to rebuild myself from the inside out. I've always known Him. Even as a child growing up, I knew that God was with me. I could feel His presence. At this time in my life, I would read my Bible for hours, and every book I could get my hands on that was self-help. I invested hours into just rebuilding me. I wrote myself a letter and admitted to myself I had been sexually abused, raped, and was married to a man who was cheating on me. It was time to get real. I knew even though the surgery would remove the weight, it wouldn't teach me how to love myself. And I was going to have to rebuild my self-esteem and my self-confidence in order to keep that weight off. The day after Christmas in 2009, my ex-husband asked me and the kids to join him in the living room, and he explained he was in love with another woman. He'd been having an affair with her for more than a year. And I'd like to tell you I was surprised, but I wasn't. I had caught him cheating on me off and on throughout our marriage. And so I overlooked the pain. I didn't want to lose what I felt was so real. And being raised in a Christian home, I thought I had to stay married. During our marriage, I had let my Arkansas and Texas cosmetology license expire. And so now divorced, I had no money and no job, and I just stared at the walls and thought I was dying. I literally thought I was dying. But I had my faith. I told my children, my family, and my friends I would work hard to rebuild and just accept I would have to start over. But God had been preparing me. Looking back, God had been preparing me all those years. So I went back to what I do best. And I picked me up a job working at Hair Dimensions. And in February of 2009, I went back to work. I would work in the morning and get off at night. And then I'd go to the country club and clean the rich people's houses. And sometimes I'd take Jaden with me when her brother had football practice. And I'd tell her one of these days we're going to have a house like this. Chase, he picked up a part-time job at Lowe's so that he could help me pay the bills. And then by summer, Chase was honored as Offensive Lineman of the Year and graduated from high school. Jaden, oh sweet Jaden, when everything seemed like it was so hard, she was still walking around the house singing about Jesus. In 2009, I was discovered by a local DJ here in town. While cutting commercials at the radio station for Hair Dimensions, and I was asked to co-host for the morning show. That's when I became StacyK, the relationship expert. This opinionated hairstylist with a southern accent, and before you knew it, being on the radio, my business and salon just boomed. I was in demand. I was awarded the Stylist of the Year, and I was chosen one of the top 5 bachelorettes in South Texas, and I was asked to judge beauty pageants, and I hosted the media awards show, and I judged barbecue cook-offs, and I got to kick off the livestock show one year. And so all these things started happening, and more just kept taking place over those years. But God just kept providing. He kept supplying. In 2011, I went to work for myself at Shirley Marvelous Salon and decided I would write a book. I went back to those journals that I started writing throughout my 20s, and I began to write about what it truly means to be beautiful. I opened up the Bible, my favorite book, and I started to search through Scripture, and I discovered that integrity, courage, and confidence, forgiveness, happiness, all those things are written throughout the pages. And for once in my life, I completely understood what it was saying. Helping others is what I have always dreamed of doing. I feel like God called me to share my story of sexual abuse to help change the world. But as I have learned throughout this journey, many people don't know the truth about sexual abuse. Some people believe you have to come from poverty or be homeless. Others think of the words registered sex offender or pedophile or molester. And some people believe you have to have multiple episodes of abuse or it just doesn't count. But that's not true. One episode of sexual abuse, one incident, can happen and scare you for the rest of your life. It can happen by the same sex, the opposite sex, children, sexually abused children, your siblings, your next door neighbor, someone you're in a relationship with. Sexual abuse can happen to those raised in church and the most popular well-liked kids at school. 1 in 3 children are sexually abused, and most of us don't even know it. When you suppress the trauma, you grow into adults trying to hide from a past, hoping to forget this pain. When you are exposed to sex for the first time and not prepared for its exposure, it scares you, it haunts you, and it will destroy your life if you let it. Looking back on my life, I know now from birth I was saved and given a chance at life so I could help others who are sexually suppressed. I currently spend my time as a hairstylist, making people beautiful from the inside out. I'm not sure where God's taking me, but I know He's in control of my life. And so wherever He leads, I'm going to follow. In 2014, I became the CEO and founder of Justus Love and formed a movement for sexually suppressed adults who want to be a survivor of sexual abuse. I work with men and women all over the world to pray it out, write it out, speak it out. My name is StacyK, and I'm a survivor. My past no longer defines me. It is my character, and my character alone, that makes me a remarkable person in the sight of God.